So, for at least the last 5 days, there's been a very substantial recharacterization of certain currents in the spectrum. And since Sunday night, something happened. Somewhere a bond got downgraded. Okay, this is different than other kinds of changes to bond ratings I've experienced before. Somewhere a bond got downgraded, and it was very significant. And what that means is what that means. But in the process of that, there is now this thing I've experienced before that I consider to be a form of torture. See, if you're not conscious of it like I am, it may mean one thing and you deal with it in one manner. But I believe it's part of this bipolarity that has been going on. And I believe it's also part of illicit uh, inverse indexing. It may even have been something that was triggered by the recording that the Secretary of State, or the alleged Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, made in Israel that was recounted in the speech last night. I did not watch the speech, but I read an article. And in the text of the speech that is recounted, he makes certain references that if they are allowed to be associated with the acronyms, actually means something different. For instance, he mentions a CCP, which is a central counterparty. This is something I've been dealing with for a long time, and we are actually now more than a month overdue for the 1 year default on implementation of an international banking convention requiring greater disclosure of sources of funding, which would also potentially identify who has been engaging in illegal central counterparty swapping. So if you have the Secretary of State actually in Israel presenting a speech as part of a political convention in the United States and making these coded references, the acronyms for which mean something different. You see this happen all the time. They call something by one name in one area, but then there's almost a completely contrary meaning of what that name or that acronym means in a different area. And this is why when you don't disclose and appropriately identify, or what I call node, the risk level you're working with a direct discussion of what the standards are in that moment, then you allow for what some people might call leveraging, but what actually can turn out to be a serious and significant security threat that also amounts to the illegal expropriation of people's assets, including assets necessary for national security. Is it the sort of thing that what that should have been was actually some sort of announcement from the Department of Defense? And instead, they had the Secretary of State in a foreign country broadcasting to the United States. Was he a CCP in the moment himself? Who was he a proxy for? Or was he laundering Israeli assets to the Palestinian Authority in the White House, or i.e., the presidential accounts in the White House? But because that policy was done for 8 years under Obama, and none of the Democrats revealed it, and all of them have been co-conspiring with it since, up to and including as part of the means by which the foundation for this bioterror attack that we are globally experiencing right now is being promulgated under false pretenses. He's actually doing something that ridiculous and ludicrous. And if nobody comes to their senses and breaks the programming to blindly and loyally follow organized criminal activity that saturated the federal government and our local administrations, I mean, he might as well just get away with the stock transfer, and we'll have to wait until the next quarterly report to track the earnings down, right? I don't agree with that. It needs to be called out now. Apparently the current is if you got something that says you're not our choice, then they may be saying you're not the one we're going to assassinate. Am I supposed to be grateful? Thank you for agreeing after all this time that you're not actually going to assassinate me personally. But I still let you know, I'm letting you know, you're not allowed to assassinate anybody.